Hi, my name is Anderson. Today we'll be learning about the brain. The brain is part of the central nervous system. The central nervous system consists of the brain itself, the brain stem, which you'll see here, and lastly, which is not shown here, will be the spinal cord. So, the spinal cord is the lowest part of the central nervous system. It's a long, thin tube of neural tissues that are encased in a vertebral column. The spinal cord leads up into the brainstem, and then the brainstem leads to the brain. The two major parts of the brain are the cerebrum, which is right here, and lastly, the cerebellum, which is back here. Let's go over the individual lobes. So, the most frontal part of the brain, or most anterior part of the brain, is called the frontal lobe. There's a left and a right frontal lobe. Frontal lobe, frontal lobe, frontal lobe, frontal lobe, frontal lobe, frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is both on the left and the right side of the brain. The frontal lobe is a region of the brain that's most anterior. Frontal lobe is involved in motor movements as well as area for generating speech. A subregion of the frontal lobe is also known as the prefrontal cortex. It is known to express personality and social behavior. Complex processes such as reward, attention, planning, and motivations happen here. So as we move further on back, we have the parietal lobes. So parietal lobe here, parietal lobe here. So left and right parietal lobe. So the parietal lobe is located directly behind the frontal lobe, on top of the cerebellum. The parietal lobe processes functions such as touch, pain, and temperature info from the skin. Aspects of the parietal lobe also includes high-end visual processing. This is the part of the brain that also processes sensation of being touched. So as we travel further back into the brain, we have the occipital lobes. We have the right and the left occipital lobe. The rear of the cerebellum, or the cerebellum, no, not cerebellum, cerebrum, is the occipital lobe. This lobe processes visual info. This is a very highly organized process. Neurons will first represent lines in particular orientation, either vertical, horizontal, or angled, then connect with neurons that represent shapes, triangles, squares, etc., and then higher sets of neurons start to build a generic context. There are even neurons that will respond to particular individuals, so you will recognize them from any angles, such as your mom or sister or brother. The last major lobe is the temporal lobe. The temporal lobe is located on the left and right side of the brain. It's actually right above the ears. It's coincidentally that it's right by your ears because this area of the brain processes auditory information. The temporal lobe takes raw sound and provides context, an example, words or music. Like with visual processing, it's a highly organized process. Neurons early in processing represents particular frequencies of sounds. There are special collections of neurons that then translate the sounds into words. This area is used when listening or watching someone's mouth make movements of the word. Damage to this area is also what's known as Wernicke's aphasia. It leads to being unable to understand spoken word or written language. So that about wraps up with the brain. Most of the information I got was from our textbook reading. I hope you enjoyed it.